Shalom, shalom, my Haverim. Greetings, my YouTube mishpacha. What's up, my people? Welcome back, friends, to Bible on a Bicycle.
Where do we come from? What fundamentally is it to be a human being? What's most real in the world? What is our connection? How are we related to the animal kingdom and the rest of God's creation and so on? These questions are ones that are answered by religions, Christianity, but also answered by naturalism. So naturalism, you might think, is a semi-religion. Contemporary evolutionary theory is compatible with belief in God. Evolution covers a multitude of theses. The New Testament says love covers a multitude of sins. Evolution covers not necessarily a multitude of sins, but a multitude of theses. First of all, the ancient Earth thesis that the Earth is maybe 4 billion years old. Who knows exactly how old, but certainly a lot older than, say, was thought in the 18th century. The universe itself is maybe 13 billion years old. So the ancient Earth thesis first. Second, the thesis of descent with modification, where the idea is that all the vast variety of flora and fauna, all the vast variety, enormous variety you find in the living world, all came to be by virtue of offspring differing, ordinarily in rather small respects, from their parents. And these differences proliferate and spread out, and as a result you get this enormous variation that you do find in our contemporary living world. And then third, there's the common ancestry thesis, the idea that if you pick any two living creatures, not just any two people, not just any two mammals, but any two living creatures, and trace their ancestry far enough back, you'll run into a common ancestor, right? So we're all cousins, not only us people, but we're cousins with all living things. You and the summer squash in your backyard are cousins under the skin or under the rind, as the case may be. That's the third one. Then the fourth one, Darwinism, in some ways the most important one. Well, I don't know if it's the most important, but the most perhaps discussed one. The claim that the principal mechanism driving this process of descent with modification is natural selection, winnowing or working on random genetic mutation. So you all know how this is supposed to work. These random mutations occur periodically. Most of them are lethal, but some are in fact not lethal, but adaptive. And the creatures to which these mutations accrue, the adaptive ones, if they are also heritable, they leave more offspring than the creatures that don't have the benefit of them. And eventually the change spreads, the whole new genotype spreads to the whole population, and the whole thing can start over again. It's by virtue of this process. Of course, it's not as if it occurs as if there's just one of these going on at a time, so to speak, in a species. There might be many. But by virtue of this process going on over and over and over again, you start from just, say, a single living cell of some kind and wind up with everything you find in the world now, all the living creatures you find, including us human beings. All right? When I think of Christianity, I'm thinking of something like the intersection of the great Christian creeds, the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, maybe the Catholic Baltimore Creed, Baltimore Catechism, the Heidelberg Catechism, Luther's Small Catechism. All of these creeds, what they have in common, that's sort of, you might call this mere Christianity, the mere Christianity that C.S. Lewis talks about. That's what I'm thinking of when I speak of Christianity. And if you take a look at these four theses, the first three are pretty obviously compatible with that. The ancient Earth thesis, lots of Christians don't think the Earth is that old, but it's not part of the creeds, part of Christianity defined in that fashion. that the Earth is, say, only 6,000 years or 10,000 or 100,000 or something like that. They don't make any pronouncements on that. And the same for the next two, the thesis of descent with modification and the common ancestry thesis, where there might be a conflict, or sort of the best place to look for a conflict, the most plausible place to look would be perhaps Darwinism, the idea that what drives this process of descent with modification is natural selection, working on random genetic mutation. So we have to ask this question, is Darwinism incompatible with theistic religion? And a large number of people think so. A very large number of people say that it is. People both way to the left on the theological spectrum and also to the right on the theological spectrum. But if you just think about it abstractly, it doesn't seem like that's right. I mean, as far as mere Christianity goes, that doesn't say much about how God created the living world. He could have done this in many ways, whatever way it pleased him to do it, really. And if he wanted to, he could have used some process like some kind of Darwinian process involving descent with modification, and where the whole thing is driven by natural selection. God could have done it that way if he'd wanted to. I'm not saying God did do it that way. That's this whole question as to whether theistic evolution is an acceptable way of thinking or is in fact true. But there's no contradiction there. God could certainly have done it that way. Now, where would we think that there would be a conflict here? Well, it would be with respect to this claim on the part of Christianity and other theistic religions too, that God has created human beings, created them in his image. He created them in his image. He wanted them to be a certain way. He intended that there be creatures of a certain kind. And then he acted in such a way as to bring it about that there be creatures of that kind. Maybe creatures who have knowledge and have a moral sense, can tell right from wrong, and who can stand in some kind of personal relationship with God himself. All right? I mean, maybe that's a certain way of cashing out the notion of image of God. There are other ways too, but maybe that's one way to think about it. But the point is, God would then have guided and orchestrated this whole process with a certain end in mind. He wanted there to be a certain kinds of creatures. It's that these people think is incompatible with evolutionary theory. What's not consistent with Christian belief is the claim that evolution and Darwinism are unguided. So that's what's not compatible with Christian belief. If we have in fact come to be by virtue of evolution, by way of evolution, then it would have been by God's guiding this whole process, directing it, orchestrating it. Okay? So what's not consistent with Christian belief is the claim that evolution and Darwinism are unguided. But there are a whole choir of distinguished experts that tell us exactly that evolution is unguided. The principal form of argument for the conclusion, the basic conclusion here, is that evolution reveals a universe without design. The form of argument for that conclusion, the main argument, goes, we know of no irrefutable objections to its being biologically possible that all of life has come to be by way of unguided Darwinian processes. All right? That's the premise. Therefore, here's the conclusion, all of life has come to be by way of unguided Darwinian processes. All right? If you think about that argument, I mean, you'll see that it's really a pretty lousy argument, right? In fact, that's putting it mildly. It basically goes like, it hasn't been proven impossible, therefore it's true. It's an unusually bad argument as far as I can make out. Okay, so as far as I can see, the claim that evolution demonstrates that human beings and other living creatures have not, contrary to appearances, I mean they certainly look designed, have not, contrary to appearances, been designed, that's not a part or a consequence of the scientific theory of evolution just as such. That is what you might call a metaphysical or theological add-on. The theory just as such is not a theory of guided evolution, certainly, but it's also not a theory of unguided evolution. As a scientific theory, it doesn't address such questions as whether or not evolution has been guided by God, for example. Science typically doesn't address questions of that sort. If you study physics, you learn about natural laws of various kinds, say Newton's laws, but there isn't any further comment in the science as to whether or not these laws were put for the universe by God or happened by chance or something of that sort. That's typically not part of science at all. So it looks to me that the claim on the part of all of these people that the theory of evolution just as such, the scientific theory, includes unguidedness, it looks to me like that's a metaphysical or a theological add-on. That's what these people believe themselves, but it's not part of the theory just as such. If we're regularly told by the experts that in fact the theory is a theory of unguided evolution, it's no wonder that many Christians believe that. The experts are, after all, experts. But then it doesn't matter whether their beliefs are for the most part true or for the most part false or half true and half false.
As always, thank you for joining me here. I know your time is valuable, and I surely do appreciate you spending a little bit of it here with us, delving into our Bibles. Hope to see you here next time, and until next time, remember, Yeshua, Jesus loves you. So do I. Now get off of here from out in front of this here screen. It's a beautiful day here, so if weather permitting where you're at, go ride your bike and read your Bible.